Today on the show, the semifinals have come and gone. Argentina does what Argentina does. England does what England does. France surprises us by doing what England does. And, well, Spain did what Spain did. Surprises, not so many surprises. Some good football, some good storylines. Are you ready to go, David?
I'm so ready. I'm so excited for the final.
Then let's get to it. Live from San Jose, California, and Brooklyn, New York, it is the Any Given Thursday podcast, hosted by us as usual. And if you came here for analysis, breakdown, tactics, feelings, thoughts, prayers about the semifinals, you're going to be disappointed because this is actually just a preview for the third place match. We'll be spending about an hour and a half to 2 hours on England versus France. The final we all wanted to see, isn't that right, David? I'm just kidding. If I would have taken a final between any combination of these two sets of teams and been pretty chuffed about it. I think Spain-Argentina is probably not the most dramatic of those, but it's up there. Because I think
I
like
think
the
you're right.
Argentina-France rematch would have
hmm
been quite the story. England-Spain would have had the 4 consecutive finals between the Euros and the World Cup, include with men's and women's having the same final, and then Spain winning all of them inevitably. That would have been something. But I think this is an interesting. I don't, especially because they are the winners of the Euros and the last Copa, and because they never quite scheduled that finalissima that they were supposed to play to see who was the better team. Now we're gonna find out.
Yeah, it's kind of fitting to have the champions of the two biggest confederations going head to head at the World Cup final. It's two countries that also it feels like they should have a bit more uh, sporting history together, right? Like this is one of the biggest European countries and one of the two big South American countries, and I think they've only played one time before at the World Cup in '66 when obviously there was I'm pretty sure Spain beat Argentina and there was some questionable refereeing decisions, but what World Cup game hasn't had questionable refereeing decisions, as we'll talk about with these two semifinals. But yeah, kind of a matchup we don't get to see as often as people might expect between two countries that are at such a prominent position in the sport.
Especially these days. I mean, Spain obviously had a large amount of history in the 19th century, but had never been to a World Cup final until 2010. Like their World Cup history is kind of has lots of stumbles along the way. Their Euro mastery is sort of unprecedented, but haven't until even between 2010 and this World Cup, lot of falters post that between those great generations that they've had in the 21st century. So it is a weird. In fact, I think this was only their second ever World Cup semifinal, which seems almost impossible, given how many great Spanish players have come and gone over the years. But yeah, the World Cup has just never been like the thing for them, except for 2010,
hmm And now, 2026. This
2026.
is, as you said, it's going to be their second finals. Argentina, though, it's going to be their seventh, which equals Brazil for second most of any country. Only one behind Germany in the lead with 8. So, yeah, kind of a team that's got this huge World Cup reputation and history versus a team that, to the surprise of most people, doesn't have that, given how great they've looked really since 2000. I mean, Spain's been a top 5 European nation in most people's minds every year since 2000, but just haven't really gotten it done at the World Cup.
Definitely a generational thing too, because like we grew
Mhm.
up with this idea of this like with the at an impressionable age at the birth of that Spanish national team, but also Pep's Barcelona, which were very interwound in their stylistic approach, obviously. Um, and that's another interesting storyline about the final here is that crossover with the Guardiola of it all and his relationship with Messi and how that's and how Scaloni has kind of harnessed the elderly version of that in Messi with this era 2020s era of Argentina. Um, Not that they play anything close to that like heavily positional style. They're sort of more the South American relational kind of universe.
Mhm.
But Messi's like free role within that is kind of like an interesting crossover point between those two styles and eras. And yeah, the whole like European versus South American, like the most positional and steady build up through the lines that Spain will offer, pass you to death, versus Argentina's like Mad Max Fury Road uh, approach. I think it makes for a fascinating affair. But we're not actually going to talk about that, David. We're going to do that on
Because
a
we have to
different
focus
pod.
on the third place game.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to do that on a different pod. A final preview, I think, will come out Saturday morning um, for maximum visibility leading up to Sunday's final. And it also give us some time to really hone in on both of these semifinals here, because a lot happened, and I think we should start with England won to Argentina. It's all happened again. We've repeated history. Argentina's done the same thing they've done to everybody in the knockouts so far, and broken hearts. England has taken their foot off the gas and invited pressure and suffer the consequences again. Uh, where do you want to start here? I felt like the whole game watching this at the pub around a lot of English people and a lot of English sympathizing Americans, which is a whole other thing that needs to be discussed at some point. Uh, I
Yeah,
just
I have
felt like
thoughts.
I almost felt like I was floating above it all, because I thought everything that happened was so predictable, and I was super entertained until I was almost not entertained by how obvious everything was turning out, you know? And I felt like
Yeah.
I almost like it deserved a twist. I was like, if this game doesn't go to penalties, I'm going to be disappointed. But how can you be disappointed when 39-year-old Lionel Messi, probably the greatest player who's ever lived, is hitting a double assist to lead his team to the World Cup finals over their hated England? Like, you can't complain about that. It's magic stuff.
Yeah, you didn't have to say probably. I mean, he is the greatest player to ever
Officially,
exist.
yeah.
I don't think it's even close at this point.
I mean, it would
And
just be Pele. I'm not even thinking about Maradona.
yeah, it has that's the only one in the conversation. Obviously, neither of us have seen Pele or Maradona, to be fair. We
Oh,
never
I was
saw
there.
him live
I
or
was there.
oh yeah. Max famously invented time travel to go back to the 80s.
Yep. I did
Um
nothing but go watch
specifically
Pele and Maradona. I solved
yeah.
no problems in the world. I did not prevent assassinations.
But I think we kind of got to break this game into two portions, right? One up until England's goal, and the second one is after England's goal. And up until the goal, it's a pretty even game. I think you'd be hard pressed to say England don't have a slight advantage up until that moment, right? Like they look pretty dangerous on the break. They're having trouble breaking down Argentina's back line, but when they're able to draw the midfield forward, Kane has done a great job of creating space for Bellingham and Anthony Gordon in particular to get forward. It's cagey, but not,
Violent.
not defensive. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely
Approaching
a little violent
violence.
already.
Approaching violence, not quite.
Yeah. It hasn't fully exploded yet. But it's not super defensive. It's just both teams have good defenses and have had trouble breaking down the opponent. And I think from there, when England do score, we see a shift in their approach. One that, like you were saying, it was predictable because we've seen it at multiple World Cups and we've seen it multiple times at this World Cup, where they kind of take this deeper approach. And then Argentina bring on Nico Gonzalez for Paredes. And I think that was one of the big changes in this game was Argentina adding somebody who provides width in the attack, right, and taking away control from the midfield because they recognized that England were not interested in controlling the midfield anymore. So you add that width in attack. You can tell for the next 10 minutes, England's backline are not dealing with it well. Nico Gonzalez, right when he comes on, instantly creates a couple chances. He looks dangerous. So then England respond by bringing on Ezri Konsa for Anthony Gordon, and I think that's what lost them the game.
Go into the
Is
back five.
too early and going too deep against an Argentina side that we have seen multiple times break down these really deep blocks because they aren't going to just throw in crosses the way Mexico did at the end of the game against England, right? Argentina are so comfortable playing in these tight spaces in front of the goal and creating crosses from inside the box as opposed to having them be way out wide, which neutralizes England's height advantage. It neutralizes a lot of the physical advantages that the English defenders had. And yeah, it's just too deep, too early for England, and they naturally end up conceding 2 goals.
Too deep, too early is how my friend Kevin falls in love after a date or two. Shout out Kevin, who does not like sports. They were too deep, too early, even before they went to the back five. Like as soon as that kickoff from that goal, who by the way, Anthony Gordon totally deserved that moment. He had played so well the last couple weeks, and it was nice to see him rewarded. And ironically, Tuchel had seemed to finally get the right wingers to start the game instead of having to sort of switch it up to adjust to the game flow on the fly. He went with Gordon on the left and a surprise in Morgan Rogers on the right because Saka couldn't go today. And Madueke, which was probably probably cost them in the later phases of the game in some ways not to have that option. Not that he would have been the key difference in the game, but having someone else to play out of those blocks. But Morgan Rogers started on the right, which we hadn't seen this version of the England team, and proved to be pretty useful because he delivers the assist for Anthony Gordon's go-ahead. But immediately off of the kickoff, they're back and dropping 6 in the back line with both the wingers like all the way back alongside Spence and Reece James, who shockingly made it 81 minutes in this game. I lost my bet with cousin Adam about how long he'd go out before he went out with a hammy. I just don't. Tuchel is being absolutely raked through the coals on all the podcasts, all the English media, and the hyperbole I would normally be like, oh, it's a little dramatic, like it's kind of a home review, but I'm not sure there is any defense of him for the moves he made in this game because I thought the whole point of his presence there and him replacing Southgate was to push them past that this mental hurdle that they have where they take their lead and they sit back and they blow the game by being too negative with players who are now better than that. Like this isn't an England team that has to do that. And yet he did it again, and he did it in an even more extreme, miserable way than any of the Southgate offenses you can point to, say Croatia 2018 semifinal, say the final against Spain in the Euros 2 years ago. Though in those cases I feel like they sort of lost control of how the game was being played and were like the inferior team in the general approach. And here it was so much self-inflicted because they were in the game, and you'd think trying to control the ball a little more, taking advantage of a more and more desperate Argentina on the break by having outlets to go to. An Argentina defense that's actually looked pretty open in transition throughout this tournament. Even Cape Verde exposed that. So kind of in every way, I thought this was baffling, especially given the opponent. It's one thing you're playing against another team, and you're like, oh, we can get away with this. Argentina has this protagonist thing. They have this Thanos level inevitability. So, I don't know what else you can say. It was just staggering to me the way they approached this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you're right that it's the wrong opponent to do this against. Because we've seen England had done this against Mexico in the knockouts, right? There was at the very end of the Congo game, they took this approach. And those are teams that are going to put in crosses from wide. So, yes, you want to bring in the extra center back. You want a Dan Burn, who's a giant, to be in that box and to defend headers. And that's going to make you tougher to beat. Argentina are going to want to play in the box, even when there's, 8 defenders there, because they're so good in those tight spaces on the ball. So it's even just packing more defenders into the box isn't going to stop Argentina's attack in the way that it could against some of the other teams that were looking to put in crosses. So I think you're right that it's the wrong style against the wrong opponent, which you would expect someone like Thomas Tuchel to be able to manage and to have a firmer grasp on than, like Southgate, who obviously any manager that gets to the Premier League or to the English national team conversation is a better tactician than I am. But in this game, it felt very predictable, like you were saying, once they shifted into this defensive formation, that they were going to concede. And it's something that frustrates me so much when I watch teams do it, because you never stick with what got you there, even though defensively you'd been really, really good up until that point against this dangerous Argentina attack. And I think if you lose playing your style, you lose going out, trying to make it work, that's one thing. But to lose where you basically concede the game like this is so much more frustrating and so much more difficult to swallow when your team had shown that they could compete in this game.
Yeah, to leave no option for outlet, Kane spends the last 30 minutes in the defensive box, Bellingham's once they're in the back five, he's on the left side ahead of the defensive line, just scrambling around chasing Messi. And that's yeah, you want Jude has the capability to do that in pockets, but that's not you. These are the two players that dragged you to this point, and they've been completely taken out of the game. Why even have them on the pitch then? If that's how.
And it's been a consistent thing with Harry Kane. How many shots do you think he had in this game?
Oh, none.
He had one shot. It was from
even have
10 yards outside the box, and it was blocked.
Yeah.
He had one touch in the box.
And England didn't have many. We haven't even said the now famous stat, which is between Gordon's go-ahead goal and the eventual Lautaro winner in stoppage time. 12% possession for England. 12%.
And then
12%.
It's outrageous. That's outrageous. That's undefendable.
That's almost 40 minutes.
You could take my pickup team and put us out there against England, and I think we might get 12% of the ball just from them kicking it back to us after they score goals. That's an outrageous number.
It's indefensible.
On the Harry Kane thing, do you remember when they went out to Croatia in the 2018 semifinal, how many shots he had?
No.
2 shots, both outside the box. In the Euro final against Spain, how many shots did he have? 0.
Yeah.
In the final against Italy, that went all the way to penalties, how many shots did he have? 0. They keep taking these overly defensive approaches in important games when your best player is the star striker of the world, right? Harry Kane is probably the best striker in the world right now. And he can't get him. Yeah, I guess there's genuine competition. 2024, it probably is just Harry Kane for that
and
final.
Yeah, you're right. They're just
but
not.
they don't use him. He doesn't get into dangerous positions
no
in this.
service.
He drops way too deep. Yeah. And I don't know how much of it is Harry Kane's mentality in this of I need to find a way to get onto the ball after not getting the service, or how much of it is fully just on the coaches not getting him the ball and not putting him in positions to succeed.
I think it's both, and I think one of the great things for England about the Bellingham's rise to stardom is that he complements. They have an understanding now, and he complements when Kane wants to positionally swap with him, go find the ball. Bellingham will replace him, and then take over the goal scoring threat in the box, which we saw a bunch. Kane even assisted him on that second goal in the Azteca. But by posturing so defensively for that period, you take Bellingham out of the ability to play that role. Like, you locking him into like deep defending his own box, and then if once Kane drops in to get the ball, then there's nobody. You have your wingers so deep defending the opposing wingers, and then especially when Nico Gonzalez comes in, and then you have Bellingham tracking Messi. He doesn't have the energy to go make a sprinting vertical run up to hold possession. So there's no outlet, and I mean that's just tactics, right? Like there's not like they you could have Kane sitting up and being a target man, but then you're removing a bunch of his like elite skill set. You could see a couple times when he dropped deep, he played like kind of a brilliant pass out to Morgan Rogers at one point. Like there's a reason why he does it beyond like he wants to get touches. He's excellent at it. He could play the 10 if he wanted to. But you need to be able to complement that, and I just don't understand anything that like I understand it in that it was predictable and that it's what England does. But again, the whole point of Tuchel being there is to elevate them past that, whatever that like mental hurdle they have about getting to that last step with this generation of talent. And they not only did they fall into the same trap, but they went deeper into the hole. Like it's even worse, I think, because of the talent of the squad and because of the whole point of paying this German guy this exorbitant amount of money, because they don't believe there's an English coach that can do that for them, and they might be right. I don't know. I don't know what else you can say, really. Like I think there's tactical things here, but in the end, I think it's alarmingly self-explanatory for how a team botched a semifinal. We haven't even talked about the Argentina side of this because it almost seems like so obvious that they came back that I don't even know what the story is. It's just like, again, they did it again. Same old, It's an incredible thing to say about a team that's gone on a run like this, but I don't even know what to say about Argentina. Do you want to
Yeah,
talk
I
about the
mean,
goals they scored?
they have some absolute plot armor, don't they?
They do. They really do.
Um, yeah, I guess the first goal, Enzo Fernandez just rips from deep, and you could see him trying to line it up a few times before he took the shot that went in. He'd taken a shot only like a minute before from basically the same position. He was constantly trying to find that spot outside the box where he could get a clean sight on goal. And it was something Argentina were trying to set up. And again, this is the defensive position. I mean, I think where England struggle is Jude Bellingham needs to come and close him out. That's something that's on the players, and they need to recognize that Enzo is looking for that. Because I texted you before it happened.
But the reason they
Enzo's
don't,
looking for that
the
shot.
reason they don't is because they're all eyeing Messi because it's on a corner. Messi gets the ball short, and everybody's got their eye. He's got a couple of people running to him, and everybody else is so deep in the box that they kind of leave Enzo wide open right off the top of the box too. And he's like, that's one of his great strengths in attack is hitting from a bit of distance. And he doesn't even have to do much here because he has so much time. All he has to do is curl it away from Pickford and his flappy little arms. Although Pickford, we got to talk about Pickford. I have lots of thoughts about Pickford, but he had made a couple of really key saves up to this point that had kept them in the lead. So he deserves credit for that. He's very good at those snap reaction saves.
Yeah. Even before they went super defensive, he was a big part of the reason they were able to take the lead in the first place. So if anybody wants to criticize him, I think you're missing the point.
This wasn't just like, I have a different reason to criticize him, but this wasn't just like it was a, well worked play, well taken chance, and it happens. This was like, they had been inviting this for so long, and Argentina had come so close a couple of times from the same areas where they're like getting crosses in those like half spaces at the edge of the box. Alexis McAllister had a couple he just missed. I was calling for Lautaro at that point for them because it felt like they needed someone who had a little more, classically striker box presence, and that one paid off pretty well for me, I'd say. I have really good receipts from texts in this game where I was texting people like from the 62nd minute. I was like, "This is bad. England's gonna fuck this up." Like, look at how they're look at how they're sitting right now. And then I got the Lautaro one in. I fucking nailed it.
He texted me, Argentina got to bring Lautaro on. Feel like he's going to score, and then
Ah,
boom.
boom. Yeah, the second goal too is just, I mean, it's. I feel bad for Jed Spence here because he put in such a shift. He had that incredible tackle earlier in the second half, defending the lead. Here he like just is able to poke the ball free. Alexis McAllister from almost the same place on the other side of the edge of the box that Enzo had scored. McAllister rips one, hits the post, looks like it's going in. Jed just gets a touch to it that sends it out of the box. It looks like they've avoided disaster there, but then Messi picks it up. Uh, two guys on him, including a recovering Spence, try to force him right because that's what you're told to do. You don't want him. I mean, it makes sense. You're like, he cuts in on his strong foot. He either curls one in over Pickford, or he puts that little like cross in that the Argentines love to do, into a box full of attacking players. Instead, he goes end line, weaker foot, perfect cross in between the two English defenders, right into the head of Lautaro Martinez, who finally has his like he has his Argentina moment. We feel like we waited like 10 years for this with Lautaro, because he's never quite worked in the starting lineups with Messi, and he's often relegated to this like impact sub bench role. But Argentina, we keep saying it, they've really found something chasing these games with having him and Alvarez out there when they're able to flood numbers into the box. The two of them have just suddenly started to work together in those situations. And this time it was Lautaro. They're just like, it's funny to me that like in the last round, Lautaro started, didn't have the moment himself, but Alvarez comes off the bench, scores the winner. Exact opposite today. It's just like it almost doesn't matter what you do or who you play with Argentina, but like anything you change will immediately work and impact the game. It's like it's unbelievable.
It feels like every button Scaloni presses is the right button, no matter what button it is. Whatever he does, it just has a way of working out. And this is
That was
another
easy.
example of it. Yeah. Yeah, it's like the Staples button, not a sponsor.
Yeah.
But Lautaro only had 2 touches all game. And one of them's way on the side is from a
He only
throw-in,
played like
where he
12
just
minutes.
takes the ball. Yeah. And like you said, it's even though statistically he has a great return for Argentina, it's always felt like he's never been able to have one of those big moments that you want from a star striker. And he kind of fits into this legacy that Argentina have of really talented strikers who just can't quite get it over the line with
Tevez.
Argentina and bring that talent. Tevez, even Aguero to an extent. Higuain is probably the biggest example, right? All these guys who were superbly talented, but just never were really able to make it work with Argentina.
Higuain missed their biggest chance in the 2014 final against Germany.
Yeah, and
Absolutely
obviously that's
fluffed it.
his entire legacy with the Argentina national team is that miss. But Lautaro finally gets that moment. I think Alvarez, in the last game against Switzerland, that was his big moment, and he's
had plenty of
some
big
moments during the last World Cup as well. So I think he's
tons
kind
of big moments.
He's avoided this because at that time he wasn't expected even to really contribute. I think in 2022 it was like well, he's going to be the backup. Hopefully we get something from him, and he was kind of the star player outside of Messi, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything Scaloni touches with Argentina turns to gold right now, and this was another example. But it's so well worked, and it's such a great use of the players that they have, right? Everybody in Argentina was able to be in a position to succeed because you have Fernandez hanging right outside the box. He's looking for the long shot that he has been looking for all game and is great at taking. Messi gets the opportunity to dribble into the box and to look for passes. He's one of the best, inside the box passers this game has ever had. Lautaro is really great at slipping away from defenders and gets an open header. You have Nico Gonzalez is there providing the width, dragging a center back away. Scaloni put everybody in a position to do what they do best. And I think that's something not a lot of managers are able to do with national teams because you don't get to pick. Well, I mean, you pick your team, but you don't get to make transfers, right? You can't find the guys that fit your system, and Scaloni's able to mold his system to the players in a way that not a lot of managers have been able to.
Such a good piece of play individually from Messi there too,
Yeah.
to cut outside and then deliver that ball perfectly. And then the way the bench erupt, like how Messi just stops and like turns to the bench as they mob him, and Lautaro runs to the corner and they all celebrate with the fan. Like that's one of the biggest noises I've ever heard during a broadcast. Like it's just deafening. And I urge people who aren't English to go watch it on Telemundo, the highlights instead, because they have the elder Cantor, Senor Cantor, doing it, who's obviously Argentine, and he does 8 goals. Like it's like 90 seconds. It's unreal. And I think Telemundo, I suspect, in their mix has a little more of the crowd noise than Fox does, because it's way louder on Telemundo than it is Fox. Wouldn't surprise me. What else do we need to say? Is Tuchel going to be fired? I've heard that going around.
I always thought this was a one World Cup appointment.
I've heard this going around. Who is replacing Tuchel? Who's doing a better job than Tuchel? Like Tuchel fucked the game up. I'm not gonna tell you he didn't. Who are they getting? Who's gonna improve on the level? Like now, it's almost like an arms race now for coaches in international football. Now that this like barrier has been crossed, where these top club managers like have allowed themselves to, be in the international game, and it's raised the level of tactical prowess a lot for the good of international football. Like it's fun to watch. We have fewer stupid coaches. But Pochettino's coaching the Americans, which is crazy. But like at some point you run out of big names like that, and England doesn't have the roster of coaches in their back pocket who say like De La Fuentes with Spain, who was just like went up through the youth ranks. Like England doesn't have a guy like that who you're just going to promote to the top job, because they haven't had a consistent playing style until Southgate, and are just always trying to catch up to like the modern tactical and technical what's the word? They're always trying to catch up to these other countries who have a better development than they do or have had in the past. So where do you go?
It's been a thing since like the 30s with England, hasn't it? Really, as soon as they exported the game, they got behind tactically. But yeah, I don't know where you could. I always felt like this Tuchel appointment was for one cycle, because Tuchel feels like somebody who wants to be at the club level, but really wanted to have this opportunity to manage a national team. And he got a team that both of us had power ranked 4th to the semifinal. That's where they should be, but he didn't overperform, right? Because overperforming is winning. That's the only.
And he shat the bed at the final hurdle, like the last iterations of the team under Southgate. Yeah. So he hasn't, like, they might have at times been more exciting to watch. They might have harnessed something that maybe like a Southgate-led team wouldn't have been able to do. But could you have looked at, like, you could see maybe if Southgate was in charge, would they not have gotten to the exact same spot? I mean, we can't say for sure. They might have lost in the Azteca. They might, I don't know. But Norway's pretty. But Norway kind of seems really like the Croatia team they lost to. But yeah, he hasn't done it. He hasn't moved the needle enough for
and largely.
The standard.
I think a lot of these great club managers who've come into national teams haven't done so. I mean, you can look at the United States. They get to the round of 16. That's kind of where you expect them to be.
They did win a game in the knockouts, but
yeah, but a round of 32 that didn't exist previously. You know.
Yeah,
and
with
then
Ancelotti, I
Belgium,
kind of feel like, which they did in 2014. Yeah, I think with Ancelotti is a little different because he had so little time with the team and had so many injuries. I wonder
that Brazil team is also
they're flawed
for so many reasons beyond him, not to the level that it had been historically.
I do wonder if Ancelotti had 2 years of build up with them and another tournament before, if he would have figured something out that was better than what we saw. But regardless,
and if the fullbacks don't get injured, because they went from having
got injured,
really solid fullback play to probably the worst of any major nation with the Wesley injury.
Yeah, the
And
Nagelsmann experience for Germany has been pretty miss. I thought they were pretty
Mhm.
good in the Euros 2 years ago, and were like the closest anyone got to beating Spain in the last couple of years in that quarterfinal. They took them to the very end of extra time, uh, but and looked the part. But since then, haven't pushed on from there. Obviously, um, God, I wish the Dutch would hire a good club manager. God, wish this could be a conversation. But instead of fucking Ronald Koeman, who's run out of England.
and then I
Uh,
think you look at that in comparison to the two managers who are going to be at the final. Scaloni comes through Argentina's youth setup with the national team, right? Worked with a lot of these guys at the U20 level, gets the promotion to the senior team. It works really, really well. Um, Didier Deschamps, who, yes, he'd managed Juventus and Marseille, but there was a Juventus team in Serie B at the time and a Marseille where he took over with very little expectations, and he did exceptional, right? He won them their first league title in 18 years, so obviously had a great time there. But he's been with France since 2012, and it
he's French
took
national team through and through.
yeah, and it took a little bit to have this level of success with the French national team. I mean, they aren't doing particularly well when he first takes over. But, as we get longer into his tenure, 2018, 2022, and now 2026, they've been probably, they in Argentina have been head and shoulders above everyone else over this last decade. And these are two guys that are just so tied to the national team. And you compare that to all these other countries trying to keep up who are bringing in big name managers and chopping and changing all the time. And maybe this is not the right approach with the national team. Maybe this level of stability and familiarity is the right way to go.
That's kind of what England were trying to do with Southgate. Is like he had a long tenure, 8 years, and I think there's something to the youth team thing and like bringing a guy up with a generation of players through those ranks. And especially like this is a very Spanish thing in particular, but having this recognizable style of play and principles that you then pass on and age up in that sort of Barcelonian, Cruyffian, Guardiolian method is something that seems like it's pretty effective. It's something that like I mean I hate to bring up Italy, David. I don't actually hate, but like Italy has no idea who they are at any level right now, and you can see it in the product of player they're developing. I think this is a problem with the Dutch right now to some degree. Uh, and it's a problem clearly in Germany. Um, so like sometimes, but also a lot of these cycles will like, yeah, you'll hit the end of a cycle with a generation and have to refresh too. It's not like some kind of shameful thing to like not be in your best moment. I think in some of these, I mean, it is for Italy because it's gotten that bad.
Italy's
But
bad. Yeah, it's been pretty
but you need
shameful.
like the Spanish went through this between these golden generations. Like they still had great Spanish players, but they were caught in between eras and they couldn't figure out how to still be relevant for like almost 10 years between 2012 and this kind of 2024 Euros. So sometimes it just takes time, but it also takes investment and consistency to build through their young generations and maybe those are lessons to be learned instead of just going out and snapping at the biggest name available. Really having a clear identity that you build for a decade is how you win a World Cup these days. Maybe.
Because Luis de la Fuente's managed the U19s, the U21s, U23s, and now the national team. I guess the U23s was just the Olympics. But, I mean, he's managed these guys at multiple levels. He's instilled what it means to play for the Spanish national team and what the expectations and the style of play is going to be. And yeah, I think you're right that if you don't have that level of consistency, it can be hard when you get to these tournaments because you don't have something to fall back on. And I think even though Southgate got a lot of flack for his in-game management, because I don't think he's quite the level of a De La Fuente, a Deschamps, or a Scaloni, I think he progressed the English national team a lot. I mean, look at where they were before he took over.
Yep. He did
right? Like it was a
a
team that
lot
had
for him.
constantly underperformed, and Southgate became the first guy to really get them to play up to the level that we knew the talent could be there for.
Yeah, and look at
And
the level of play, the talent of player they're producing now into the
mhm,
senior level. Like that, their talent, they just have so many more uh options at so many different positions than they did 10 years ago. Like they're just bursting with talent in a way that's kind of similar to some of these other, top nations. But that's the thing, is that they've shrunk that talent deficit. Um and the, sort of like the tactical limitations of the old ways. So then the point of Tuchel was to then elevate them to the next level, and he didn't.
he
And
didn't.
that's
Yeah.
he didn't. Uh,
We
Anything
haven't
else to say
even
about
really
Argentina?
talked about, not right now. I was going to say we haven't really talked about France and Spain all that
Mm-hmm.
much. And I
We're
don't
doing that
think,
now.
yeah, I was like, I don't think we can spend too long on it. But
I
I
have
mean, what a
thoughts.
great performance! What a great performance from Spain.
Spain wins 2-0.
Mhm.
France's first shot on target was the 82nd minute, which, to say that
Incredible.
about this French team with the players they have, is unbelievable. And I mean, Spain just choked them to death off the ball and on the ball. But I thought off the ball they were okay on the ball in this one, Spain, but like not even close to their best. Um, I don't feel. But off the ball, they were as good as I've seen any team in a long time against a team that talented. They brilliantly took away all their space to attack with counter pressing, with getting feet in those sort of vertical passing lanes, those like line splitting, zone splitting balls that France likes to be able to play with Elise and like into Mbappe. Uh, I thought Rodri in particular, but also Fabian Ruiz out of possession, it was like an absolutely clinical performance from the
Really?
Spanish midfield out of possession. We think about the pass you to death, the triangles, whatever, but like the number, I wish I could find the stat. Uh how many boots to prance passes or like dispossessions did Rodri have in that game? It felt like in an infinite number.
I'm sure that stat does exist out there, and we probably could have pulled it before recording. But
I'm
um,
dumb.
yeah, but yeah, it's a really great performance from Spain. I do think, since we're talking about the great performances of Spain's midfield, I think there's a moment really early in this game that sealed France's fate, and it's the yellow card that they get to, kind of their version of a Fabian Ruiz in Rabiot, right? Obviously, Deschamps loves this man because
So rude to
Deschamps was
Fabio Ruiz. Fabian
Fabian
Ruiz
Ruiz.
hates
Yeah,
that you just said that.
I know. Well, Fabian Ruiz is the Rolls Royce version of Adrian
Yeah.
Rabiot, who's like the,
Who's Fabio Ruiz?
I don't know. Did I say Fabio too? Now we're
No,
both
I said
struggling.
no. I was just thinking that that Rabio is more of a Fabio type of
He
guy.
definitely
He's
is.
a
He is.
little bit flashy
Yeah.
looking.
Rabiot's like, he's whatever like a normal car version of this role is, and Fabian Ruiz is like the high end model,
Corolla.
right? Yeah. Um, I mean, because Rabiot's a great player. But he's a water carrier, and Deschamps was famously called the water carrier of that '98 French team. So obviously Deschamps loves this guy, right? But that early yellow card, I think it really limited what Rabiot could do for this French team. And meanwhile, you have Rodri and Ruiz who are getting on the ball constantly, making these like dangerous tackles where they're risking a foul, but they're playing on the right side, right? They're not committing fouls, but they're risky tackles and they're able to take those risks where Rabiot for the French side is not, because he picks up this early yellow card and he teeters on the line of a potential second yellow a few
He almost got a
times.
second. Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get
And
it. I
because
get
of that,
why. I get why he had to be taken off. I think that could lead us into an interesting conversation here about what Deschamps may or may not have gotten right here, because like they didn't really make any adjustments for the opponent here. They're like, we're doing the same thing that's been working, and yeah, you're okay, like incredibly talented. I get it. My main question with the starting 11 was uh Chouameni, I know, was back fit in theory, but hadn't played in a couple of weeks. and Kone had stepped in so brilliantly in his absence, and he and Rabiot had really developed a nice little like midfield partnership. And I know Chouameni was like the rock of the team previously, but I kind of question bringing him in here for Kone, and Chouameni just didn't look his normal self to me. He was so not involved in the game for so long, and then you're thinking, okay, well, I guess we can scrap that and put Kone back in, but then Rabiot picks up that early yellow, and you kind of have no choice to bring him off. So now you have a Chouameni Kone pivot that you haven't played with at all in the tournament, and I feel like that's kind of that almost feels like it's easy to say in hindsight, but that's kind of the original sin of the French setup for me. And then everything that happened in the game that was going against France, like Saliba picks up the injury, that sucks. Lacroix has to come on, and they lose a level there, and it just feels like they're chasing the game. They're like the entire time, like they can't get a foothold, and a lot of these start to feel like panic moves. Like Digne gets burned a bunch of times. We can talk about the penalty if you want, but he's just like
It's a
loses.
stonewall passing. It's just a complete brain fart from Digne to
It's really bad.
yeah.
Where there's really no threat, like he just
Mhm.
like forgets where he is on the field, and that he's defending one of the great players on earth,
If he
who's
does that
sneaking up
outside
behind
the
him.
box, it's a
Hmm.
mistake, but it's fine. If he does it
Yeah,
inside the box, it's pretty unforgivable.
criminal. It's
Yeah.
criminal negligence. And like he's lucky Yamal doesn't score again, or doesn't score on him in the second half because he blows right past him. In a way, that was more sort of what I was expecting in this game.
Mhm.
I felt almost dumb in the preview, being like, Spain, I'm surely is loving the idea of Yamal attacking on Digne's side. I was like, it can't be that simple, right? It kind of was. It actually kind of was. They're like, who's the one weak player on this French 11 in, one end of the pitch, and it was like pretty obvious who it was. But yeah, like eventually replacing Digne with Teo, and it just felt like they were always a step behind, and I feel like it all originated from that setup choice of not having Kone in there, um, and just not being brave enough to stick with what that pivot that had worked so well for them the last couple of rounds.
Mhm.
Is that an
Yeah, I agree with
oversimplification?
you. No, I agree with you, especially about the midfield duo. Tchouaméni he just didn't look like he was ready, honestly. And he's not going to give you as much of the defensive contribution that Kone had been giving France
Not
as
without
well.
full fitness.
Yeah. Um, Rabiot still had the most defensive contributions on the entire French team, despite only
He
playing a
only played
half.
45 minutes. Yeah,
Yeah. And Tchouaméni's passes were extremely safe. He never really looked to be progressing the ball, which is not typical of Tchouaméni, and I think we can probably chalk that up to not having been in the flow of the game throughout the World Cup, right? Because he was kind of working his way back. And Kone next to Rabiot had just worked well because Kone could cover when Rabiot would dribble forward or look to progress the ball. And I think they formed a really good partnership. And I think just messing with it was the wrong move. And then with Digne, I think we talked about it a little bit in the preview. You kind of thought it was being a little bit of a homer. I think Teo should have started in this one, and it's specifically because of the recovery speed that he has. Because Yamal is going to beat you, and Teo is going to be able to get back into a decent position in a way that Digne was never able to. And then also just because Pedro Porro is a great fullback, but the way Spain are playing, he doesn't bomb forward that much. So if your fullback for France gets forward, you don't have to worry about Saliba having to cover two players at once. And you could have shifted him out to cover Yamal on those instances, which might have actually just been better for them because then you have somebody of Saliba's quality marking Yamal. Obviously, that changed with the Saliba injury and Lacroix having to come on, so kind of a moot point. But I really think Digne was not the right left back to be facing Lamine Yamal. I think it's like a matchup made in hell for him.
clearly was, and it wasn't even my least favorite thing that Deschamps did, because I was enraged on behalf of all French people that when Cherki came on, okay, I get Cherki makes sense, down 2 goals, but taking Elise off there, like I know Elise hadn't had a vintage Elise game. He was having trouble getting on the ball in his normal sort of roaming 10 that they've been playing with. Spain did a brilliant job of ushering him out of those dangerous positions and not letting those balls get to him in the first place even. But Elise is still your most dangerous creator outside of Mbappe. And to me, he's been elevated in this tournament past the point of like really good superstar to like one of the best players on earth. He is now better than Ousmane Dembele. I'm just going to say it flat out. And Dembele wasn't playing well. He was playing worse than Elise. He had absolutely no contribution to the game whatsoever. And you have to take Dembele off there. Put Elise out on the right, which is where he played all season and most of his career so far. And change the look and try to have him combine with Cherokee, whatever. That's great. You cannot take Elise off there, chasing the game down 2 goals. I don't understand that at all. I really don't. And I know he has like the allegiance to Dembele. He won a Ballon d'Or. I get it. He's a great player. Dembele was done nothing that entire game, and you need Elise out there more than you need Dembele out there. It's just true.
Yeah, and Cucurella had done a great job against Dembele, so maybe just forcing him to
Change the
adapt
look.
to a different type of player. I mean, similar-ish, but like a different player who's going to try to do different things. Forcing him to have to adapt to that would put a lot more pressure on that back line. So I get what you're saying about that. And I don't know if I think Dembele had a worse game than Elise, but both were bad. Both were pretty
I just
terrible.
think
And I get what you're saying about
Elise
get
is the
Elise onto
guy
the right
who's going to
so he can
offer the
try.
moment
Yeah.
after having a bad game, not Dembele.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I agree with you. Like, I think Deschamps obviously a little forced into it with the early
he had some
subs
bad
for
luck.
Laquan Kone having to come on early, but I think the Doué sub in the 57th that doesn't do anything for me. Doué and Barcola are very similar
Barcola was
players.
bad. Barcola was
Yeah,
terrible in the first. I would have hooked
yeah.
Barcola at halftime, honestly.
That's what I mean. If you're gonna do it at halftime, so you still have 2 substitution slots in the second half. But by having to pull Barcola so early in the second half, you have one opportunity to make changes in the last 33 minutes of this game.
We're just throwing stuff at the wall at this point, but you know what else you could have done? You could have put Mbappe on the left, Elise on the right, and go full Crystal Palace. You got Lacroix in there. Get Mateta up top, get a target man, and start putting in crosses, because nothing else was working. Get Mbappe in his most comfortable position, cutting inside on his right, and Elise on cutting inside on his left. And the other thing with Chouameni starting is that, and that I liked a little more about the Kone Rabiot pivot, is Chouameni was like, he was set up to, when they were building up, he would sit back and build up it like as the deepest between the defenders and like the back three, which was, which was their intent with the game. The problem is that then if you're pushing your fullbacks up really high in that build-up shape, then you end up with Koundé having a lot of touches in like the attacking third in places where you'd maybe not want like, I'd rather have Koundé in that back three build-up than a holding midfielder against Spain, because I feel like in those crossing areas, I mean, Koundé's gotten better at this, like the longer he's played at Barcelona, to be fair, but I'd rather have like Teo or Digne putting in those crosses on the other side, and Kone and Rabiot, making trouble for people at the edge of the box more than I would Koundé being the final deliverer. But I don't know. Maybe we're just overly nitpicking at this point.
Another reason I think Teo should have at very least come on a lot earlier than the 72nd minute is you couldn't get through centrally. Rodri and Ruiz had everything sealed up centrally, and Lamine Yamal is not going to provide any defensive work on that left wing, or I guess his right wing.
He did
France's
a
left
little
wing.
bit, but not more than usual today.
Not against somebody like Teo Hernandez who's going to get so far forward, right? Lamine Yamal is not going to track into the back four.
No.
But
Definitely not.
Digne, who stays further back, Yamal can give a little like, oh, you better make your pass in a couple seconds or I'll be there type of runs at him. And that puts a lot of pressure on Spain to have to defend from different angles, right? Whereas with this setup, they locked down the middle, and France had no alternative options than to try to work through the middle, especially because you have Chouameni, who was playing so centrally in their build-up and just wasn't able to, find those long passes or even really anything dangerous from his position, partially because he'd been working back from injury. I'm not trying to say it's Chouameni's fault, I guess is kind
And
of why I'm
partially because
highlighting
like
that.
Rodri
Right.
and Co had some sort of like matrix
Yeah.
level of game plan like input into their brain where they knew where all of those passes were going at all times and just stepped in every time one of those dangerous balls was going to be delivered. They just broke it up. Like they just knew where everything was going, and France had no backup. They had no secondary like plan of attack. You know.
Yeah, because you had two fullbacks who are not going to put in too much of a attacking contribution, and I think that obviously it's hindsight is 2020, right? Like that I think was a big issue for France is that Spain were able to shut down option A, and they didn't have a good option B to turn to.
Yeah, and also Spain's counter pressing is as good as it gets.
Yeah, yeah,
Like they just Mbappe seemed to be complaining about the setup after the fact. He pointed them to being overrun in the midfield, and he also this is a quote from an Athletic article by Stuart James said, quote, Kylian Mbappe appeared to be pointing to other problems afterwards. Quote, right from the start we were pressing 3 against 2 and we messed up there, he said, and against Spain you have to press man for man. So that suggests some of the other problems as well, is that they're just sort of numerically disadvantaged in the way their setup works. And instead of and then because of the Rabiot yellow card, the injury to Saliba, they had to start going, and Barcola playing so bad, they sort of went for these like man to man changes, like for like changes, some by necessity, some not their fault,
okay,
right? But they never really that's what I mean by chasing the game. Like they didn't come out of halftime able to make that tactical adjustment that opened things up. They were kind of just like change the personnel and go again.
and that
And
was why I didn't like the Doué for Barcola sub because especially at the time that it came because it left you with one opportunity to make a tactical shift because you only had one substitution window left after that, and you're bringing on what's really one of the most like for like substitutions France have.
yeah, the other thing we should say about France is that beyond all of that stuff we just spent 20 minutes talking about, they just did not play to their technical level that we expect from them, from a team that has this much talent. And in fact, they were well below that standard. Like loose touches, passes they could normally make and didn't, all of which was made difficult by Spain, yes. But I thought like all that you just kept waiting for France to like snap into gear and like create that moment. Even if they played like shit all game, the thing was like one Mbappe chance and they're back in the game.
Mhm.
And they just never came up with a moment of quality. And that was almost the most alarming thing about it. It's like what happened to all of the players? Why did they all suck all at once? It was weird. It was weird to watch.
It was, but it sets up a really interesting final with Spain and Argentina. So
Spain
I
are
think this
cool
is going to
fucking
be
customers, man. They're so
yeah.
cool. Like in our preview we're like, can Spain haven't really gotten out of second gear all tournament, and they keep winning these games late. It doesn't feel like it's because they're up against it to me. It just felt like they just weren't being challenged, and they're like, we'll win it when we win it. We're not really at any risk.
They're
And
like the kid in high school that's really, really smart but gets B's because he is just like not interested in the subject
can't be
material.
bothered.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they get an A today, obviously. But again, once again, it's like they didn't even it didn't even feel like they had to work that hard for it, which is what's so crazy. Is that this is the best game they played at the tournament by far, and it didn't even feel effortful to beat what everybody considered to be the best team in the world. They're now France's white whale for sure. They've beaten them three
Yeah.
years in a row in competitive competitions, 2 semifinals, 3 if you want to count the Nations League. I'll just say Cucurella is a fucking monster for Spain. He's unbelievable. I don't know where this comes from. I know he's like he's been good in the Premier League for years, and now he's going to Real Madrid. So it's not like he's, not a respected player, but he looks like the best left back in the world every time he puts on a Spain shirt. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yamal looked a little more like himself, like a little
Mhm.
more pacey, I thought, a little more dangerous. Oyarzabal is Mr. Reliable, just the coolest penalty ever. Unai Simon continues to scare the shit out of me with almost everything he does.
Yep.
There was a tweet going around about, it was like down Unai Simon up 1-0 in the 87th minute or whatever, and like him flying out of his box for no reason, and then I won't say it was for no reason, but up 2-0 around the 82nd minute or something, he did fly out of his box to sweeper keeper and Mbappe chance that was actually originated with a Laporte error, so not totally his fault. But he boots it basically right to Doué, and like this was the moment the game could have gotten dicey for Spain and turned for France, and Doué just holds it, and then just sort of kicks it right into Simon running back into his box. And if you look at the replay, he has two guys, including Dembele, running completely free centrally into the box. It would have been an easy finish if he laid it off to either one of them, and he had absolutely no composure. He had no composure on the second Spain goal either, where Porro makes this great run from his position all the way into the box. Oyarzabal drags Lacroix away, and then nobody goes with Porro on the run, including Doué. And Porro gets in to finish. By the way, that's my player. Tottenham player scored in the semis of the World Cup for Spain. Can you believe it? Almost playing in the championship next year. But yeah, I don't. No, nobody was on it, but that was the most damning moment I think that summed the whole thing up for France. Like the lack of composure and technique in a key moment. Finally, just wanted to comment. Did you think the ref had a good game, David Bartone?
Oh, for this game? No. I
Yeah,
don't think either
I didn't
ref
either.
had a great game. I think Argentina,
Weird
England.
appointments.
Yeah. Argentina, England, it was like, that was just a tough game to have to manage as a referee. And I don't think he did a great job. I don't think he did a poor job.
The first half wasn't great. He kind of got away with it because the second half, because England scored when they did, it sort of took away that element of the game where they had to be like in fights all the time, which was basically the
England
whole
just
first
saved
half.
it for England saved it for after the game with Bellingham slapping Barco.
Right. Do we know why he did that?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't seen a single
It's just more
report
ginger
about like
hatred in this world.
Ugh, we're such an oppressed group of people.
Honestly, forgot he was on the Argentina team at the
Me too.
last
He
spot on
hasn't
the
played,
bench.
so
I don't understand why Bartone was assigned this game, because I don't think he's like a bad official overall, but I also don't think his strength is like controlling the flow of a game.
mhm.
He always seems like he's like kind of behind the pace and like the vibes. Like he like he's relying on big moments to be VAR'd after the fact, and he's also like kind of aggro, and that's not what a big game needs. He doesn't need like confrontation from the ref. And I think like he gives Rabiot that yellow, which I think is essentially the game's first foul,
It is.
and
It
then
is the first foul of the game.
doesn't give Elise a yellow for the most yellowy challenge ever. He goes like straight through Rodri's ankle.
I mean,
Studs up.
Elise's was a borderline red. It's a
Yeah,
100% a
Should-
card. It's a
I don't
question
think
as to whether
Rabiot's should be a yellow. I think Elise's should be. And then Spain's first foul of the game, which comes over 30 minutes into the game, Cucurella gets a yellow for, and it's not a yellow. I'm like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
I mean,
think
I guess
with
you could argue it's a
Cucurella's,
yellow, but
I think it's because he
first
gives a
foul
little.
of the game.
Yeah, I think the yellow's for the extra shove as he's
Yeah, it wasn't
doing
much,
the
though,
foul,
was it?
right? Like, but for a first foul of the game, I agree it shouldn't be a yellow.
I don't think he has a great sense of game flow, so I don't know why you're putting him into the biggest game of the tournament. Like, what do you?
He's also just very CONCACAF in that, like,
He's too CONCACAF, yeah. Double
Yeah,
CONCACAF
he's very
officials for the
quick.
semis. Double
very
CONCACAF,
quick with the card, but yeah.
but never the right
Yeah.
card. Never the right challenge gets the yellow.
Exactly. And yeah, like
I
you
just
said,
always
with
feel like he's chasing
reliant
the game.
on VAR, I agree. That's something
Yeah.
that's been, I think it's an issue with a lot of CONCACAF referees is that
Uh-huh.
they will make the decision in order to kick it to VAR and allow that to handle
Decision
some of the
is
decision making for him.
Red card.
But yeah, we have a very, very interesting final coming up for us.
Indeed, we do. I'm very much looking forward to it. I got to decide what I'm doing on that day.
Same. Yeah.
Gotta decide where I'm going. I haven't made up my mind yet.
I'm probably going to watch it at home. I like watching these big championships when it doesn't involve a team I like
Yeah.
at home, so that I don't have to be around people who are happy.
I can go hang out in Manhattan with some people, see what the vibes are.
If you guys can breathe through the smoke.
It would be quite funny if the game was delayed or postponed because of forest fire smoke. That would be a true welcome to America. But yeah, thanks for hanging out with us today. We will be back with a lot more this week, heading up into the weekend, including a preview episode of the final itself. But for now, it's a big cheers to De La Fuente and a big cheers to Scaloni. Cheers, fellas.